So here's the deal, the Sega Genesis Mini has a really amazing lineup of games. But you know what's even more amazing? That's right, the Sega Genesis itself, and so naturally there were some games left off that you could make a compelling argument for why they should have been on there. That's where I come in. Of course, feel free to mention any games that I don't bring up down in the comments, as this system had a pretty deep library, and with that comes a lot of games that are worthy of being mentioned. Also, we're talking about the lineup for the North American and PAL release, as opposed to the ones being released in Japan and Asia, which do have lineups that vary and include some of the games I'm going to mention here. However, the first games I'm mentioning are missing from every version. Yep, right off the bat, we've got a big one with Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles, which could be combined into a single game. Pretty cool, right? Maybe the best Sonic games on the system, depending who you ask. Now, this is such an obvious choice that most people will right away think, okay, there must be something out of their control, like a legal dispute or something. And in this case, that appears to be true. Sonic 3's music has a really interesting past, and oddly enough, nobody seems to be 100% certain about this, but the rumor goes that Michael Jackson, as well as his keyboard artist, worked on the music back in the day, and that's why things became messed up with the music license. Again, I'm not sure how true this is, but what I am certain of is that Sega wouldn't have just not chosen Sonic 3 to be on this list, even if they did already include Sonic 1 and Sonic 2. Another weird one to see missing from the list is Aladdin. Obviously, this is probably due to some licensing issue with Disney, but it's so unusual to see the game missing because almost everybody with the Genesis played this game. It was one of the best-selling games for the system. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Don't licensed games usually suck? And the answer to that question a lot of times is yes, but in this case the game was good because it actually had a lot of effort put into it. Sega really wanted this game to be great, and there were even Disney animators who helped work on it, which would explain why the animation is so good. The game often gets compared to the Super Nintendo version, which is a completely different game, but that topic is for another video. Okay, another odd omission would be Shining Force 2. Sure, we got Shining Force 1, but the second game is pretty much unanimously considered the better game. It doesn't seem to be due to any sort of licensing issue either, making it all the more odd. It's a strategy game which was fairly uncommon for the era, and a lot of people will tell you that this is one of the best games in the entire system's library. And speaking of the best games for the system, I have a little bit of a personal bias here, but Rocket Knight Adventures may just be my favorite game for the console. I'm not the only one either. A lot of people who have actually played this game really love it. It just seems that not a lot of people have really played it because they think it's just some Sonic ripoff or something. But oh no, it's so much more than that. After seeing that other Konami games like Castlevania and Contra were put on the console, I really thought that Rocket Knight Adventures would follow, but I guess not. I suppose the thinking must have been that Contra and Castlevania are just far more recognizable franchises. And you know what? Gamers being able to recognize these games must matter because they chose Thunder Force 3 over Lightning Force. Alright, now you may be thinking, what are you talking about? Let me explain. Okay, so there's Thunder Force 3 here, and then there's Lightning Force, which is actually Thunder Force 4, and they spelled the word lightning wrong. Now, the game is still great. The spelling error is likely the marketing department at Sega of America's fault. I doubt that the game developers, who are from Japan by the way, had anything to do with this. Now, it's really curious to me that this game would be left off the console because it's generally considered a better game than Thunder Force 3. Not that that game isn't great as well. I mean, they could have included both, and I have to wonder if they chose to just leave it off because of that really head-scratching typo in the title. We'll likely never know, just like we'll likely never know why that typo got past Sega of America in the first place. And while we're talking about shoot-em-ups, we've got to talk about Musha. This one is a real bummer because of how expensive the original hard copy is, besides being a game that people generally like. Another game that often gets brought up as one of the best games for the system, by those who follow the system closely that is, would be Herzog Zwei. And yes, that name is German, and yes, I probably didn't pronounce it right. Perhaps Sega just didn't think this game had much marketability, and in their defense, the game has a bit of a learning curve to get into it. Let's just say you'll probably be taking a look at the manual your first time. But man, this is an amazing real-time strategy game that was way ahead of its time. The final game I want to talk about is Revenge of Shinobi, with its very 80s looking cover art here. Now, we did get Shinobi 3, which is a sequel, but this is still a really important game. I feel like this series is certainly iconic enough for Sega, and you often see people debate which Shinobi game is the best on the system, so why not just give gamers a win-win and make everybody happy by putting both on? Alright, so that does it for the games that I'm going to mention, but I would like for all of you to share the games that you would have liked to see on it. Again, I should reiterate that I do think they did a great job overall with the game list, and inevitably some games are just going to be left off. That's just how these things work. Alright, so go ahead and share those games down below in the comments, and I will see ya in the next video.